like strawberry candy too.
Hello.
Hi everyone.
Greetings.
We were just
You're
telling
on which
stories
is
about tarot and oracle cards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sophia, what was the card that you found on your floor?
Chariot.
What is the significance of the chariot?
You can fuck right off is the significance. It if you're gonna believe, this is gonna sound crazy, but it relates to my back problems. Because there's like certain times there's associations about parts of you that can be in pain and what tarot card is there, and I for some reason found out that chariot is tied to the left shoulder, which I've had injury pain in, and my back was hurting out a little bit. It also ties to like the world and momentum and like riding on top of it as opposed to getting swept up underneath it. But you could have the chariot inversed and totally being dragged under that fucking part, you know? So you can have both.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that it's related to shoulder pain. Makes sense. Like if you're like pulling like a chariot, you know?
Yeah, there
It was something
are.
Go ahead.
No, there are particular cards. That's why when you were like, it's going to sound weird, it didn't sound weird to me at all. I mean, once again, I've never studied the tarot classically, not even like the Rider-Waite or, Greer decks, but I do know that there are like tarot has like associations to different body parts, similar to how certain astrological signs you'll find have particular body parts associated with it, and many times they'll have problems throughout their life with those areas of their body. Which, like for instance, for a lot of water signs, it's a lot of like gut health issues, and like almost every water sign I know has really bad gut health issues.
Are they also autistic too? Because there's a correlation between autism and irritable bowel syndrome. Irritable bowel. Yep, IBS. It has a high correlation.
It is possible. I didn't think about it. I'll have to that one I'll have to pay attention. Look out.
I wonder why.
It's like asking why is there a correlation between autistic people and trans people? Like 1 in 4 trans people is autistic. Yo, I'm autistic, so if we had 4 trans people, I would count as 1/4 of that statistic.
Well, I mean, also too, the stomach is pretty much what they call the little brain. We now understand that the stomach is like how do I put this? It's like second only to our brain as far as its functionality within our overall system. So yeah, like I think this research came out in like 2021 where they started considering it the little brain. Our gut just kind of it's incredibly important, and it's very intuitive as far as the overall functionality of our stuff. I'm not a scientist. I don't really get the complicated end of it, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The gist of it.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you just feel like dog shit just because your stomach's a little upset and then you settle it with some water and then you're okay?
I have acid reflux, so I don't know what that's like.
It doesn't. I mean, I sometimes I'm just really dehydrated because I've been forgetting to drink. But in general, if I don't take my famotidine, I am destroyed, or my other meds, because I have gut health problems.
Yeah, like in the morning, like I got like bad acid reflux. So like sometimes in the morning, I'm like, don't look at me, don't talk to me. I can't even think about anything. Can't even think about coffee. Like
you're on medicine for that, right, Jay?
Yeah, but some mornings are just, worse than others kind of situation.
You should talk to your doctor. You shouldn't have any mornings if you're on meds.
I've talked to my doctor, and they're all stupid.
We can lead into that. How much do fucking doctors and the medical system just suck absolute dog shit these days?
It's not healthcare. There's nothing healthy or caring about it. It's just like, give me your money and I will give you a pill for you to shut the fuck up and get out of my office.
We can call it medical exploitation.
Yeah. We can call it healthcare services or health services.
This is an area of life where I've always like I mean where I've been very privileged.
Yeah,
You
because your
know,
mom works for your.
because I'm like in the system, and the thing is that like what I've realized throughout my entire life that I've been, as I call myself like a hospital kid, or you know that it doesn't reflect the same for us. Like I believe you guys. I'm not denying you. It's weird. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm just saying as far as my treatment, because you know who to go to, you know who not to go to. You know what I'm saying? I never went to those people because my mom always knew who not to take me to.
Right, yeah, because she knew like all the local kind of
Right.
Or you
doctors.
live in an area where you got choices.
And of course, those same people knew my mom. So like they were always, on top of that, I apologize. It's late spring, early summertime in Philly.
Oh yeah, I just had someone rolling down the street.
So um so it is a really different experience for me, but I 100% know exactly what you're talking about. And some of the horror stories, I mean, walking the hospital hallways, like you hear all sorts of weird conversations that doctors shouldn't be having. Especially, well, it really isn't doctors; it's med students. 9 times out of 10, at least as far as that's concerned. Um, but I mean, it's no less than anything else like a community of people who like are people. They just have a doctorate and went to school for a lot of years and spent a lot of money to get educated to become doctors. They're still just people. You know what I'm saying? Like they're still
Yeah,
just as catty, just as petty, just as like there's tons of like who and politicking amongst doctors. It's just like academia in and of itself. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's all bull. You know what I mean? It's all nonsense.
I think like what it for me is like with doctors, it's like I always just get like, even if I have like a cool day, the problem is like you don't get a chance to sit down and have a relationship with your doctor, to have a dialogue of any sort, like that. Those days of like, oh, I remember when you were a young thing. Like you don't have like, I don't know of anyone that has like the same doctor like their whole life, or like a good portion of their life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like in my case, I've always just gone to whoever's fucking available when I need them. Like first it's, can I get an appointment? Because now it's like you're like, you call to make an appointment anywhere, and it's like, we can see you in 3 months. And it's like, well, I kind of need to be seen like now, next week, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
3 months. And there's no like empathy there. They're just like, I don't care, and I don't get paid enough to care about your problems. Please call another doctor. My endocrinologist, who's like managing like my diabetes bullshit, like
Mm-hmm.
he just decided that he was no longer going to take insurance. So I'm just not going to take insurance anymore.
What?
Yeah, he did send out a notice. He sent out like an email and said, I just want to let all my patients know, starting March, like at 31st of this year, he's like, we'll no longer be accepting insurance. What he said, what he did offer was, basically like, I'll still keep seeing you, that's not a problem, and I will provide an itemized bill that you can submit to your insurance, but I will not be accepting insurance. And once I told him, when I had my appointment with him, and he was like, oh, are you aware like of the insurance thing? And I was like, yep, I'm aware of that. Unfortunately, I will not be able to keep seeing you as my doctor. I don't have that kind of money up front to front that cost to be reimbursed. And once I said that, he was like, oh, okay, well, it looks like you're good. Make sure you request your paperwork. Bye.
Yep.
It's a business. It's a fucking racket. And I have a hard time believing, like, if someone tells me that they're in the medical field, they're a doctor or a nurse or this or that, I've known people who are in those industries, and after a while they stop giving a shit about the people. It doesn't become about the people, it becomes about the fucking paycheck. And is it worth it?
Yeah, I know some real nasty people who are nurses. Not to say like all bad people or all nurses are bad people. I know some wonderful fucking nurses who break their backs just to like make shit good for people.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people like that out there, and I'll give you all the shout out to make you feel heard and seen, because when we run across you in the field, you literally save our fucking lives.
Mhm.
So thank you, being the medical practitioners who actually give a shit. But like, I met a woman who, because she was a psych nurse, thought she could tell me about what my life experience was on how I could and couldn't access therapy just because she knew access to therapy on a certain area under a certain plan. She'd be like, that's wrong. You can just get it with this. And it's just like, fuck you. You know nothing. You have no clue that that's actually like municipal, not fucking provincial. And everything in Canada is like province based, you know?
That's
So
how it
like,
is here often,
if you're getting
like,
care in Toronto, it's not going to apply to fucking care in Vancouver, you know?
yeah, like if you're a
Stupid.
person here, like it's just like us with the states, like if you have Pennsylvania based insurance and you get fucked up across the bridge in New Jersey, you better find a way back to Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, for real.
Because you're fucked. They will not accept your insurance. They'll take you in the hospital and they'll bill the shit out of you. It's disgusting. Like it's
No
just
empathy.
it's utterly disgusting. But I have yet to actually find like a nice doctor, a doctor that like doesn't. And I'm not even talking about like, okay, so like the doctors I've seen, some of them have been like nice in conversation, but also like a competent fucking doctor. Like, hi, can you submit this prescription for 90 days? I need it as a 90-day prescription. Can you submit 90 days? Yeah, no problem. Da, 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 da. Oh, get to the pharmacy. Oh, your doctor sent it in for 30-day script.
Oh god, I know, right?
And then, oh, call your doctor. You know what call your doctor means? It means call the office, hope that they're there, hope that they're open, hope that you're not on waiting for fucking ever. Then you talk to the person at the desk, and they're like, yeah, we'll leave a note to the doctor here, clickety, clickety, clack, and then you never hear a call back.
I'm just gonna point this out there. For all the people who have died on American medical system, y'all could have just like had a revolution and dealt with it by now. Just saying.
It won't happen in this fucking country. People are too complacent.
I don't believe the won't happen attitude because that's paid for and benefits billionaires.
I don't know.
Right? And that also like
I
ties
just
into the
don't
whole
think.
mindset.
I don't think people. I don't think they're gonna. I don't have a lot of hope, and I don't like being pessimist. I don't enjoy that feeling. Like today, the fact that there were 3 school shootings and I'm completely apathetic about it. And I'm not saying that in a sense of like I don't care, but like some people like at my work, like in our social channels, they're like, oh my god, like I can't focus, like I can't think, like I'm so upset, I'm this and that, and I'm like, and like I feel horrible that I feel so apathetic. I don't have the bandwidth to. I'm like, oh yeah, school shootings, yeah, America, don't have kids. I don't know.
That's
don't send your
like
kid to school.
How the system keeps everything going the way it is, though, is like by making people feel so overwhelmed. Your options are to shut down, be mad about it, or ignore it. You know,
right?
Or to just be completely depressed.
I also think too, like, I think a couple things, because I've been thinking about this. I think one, as far as like revolution, the way you're talking, I think that we're too divided for that to happen right now. Revolution tends to happen when everyone, or at least the vast majority of the population, sees the problem, but that's not necessarily the reality of what we're in here. At least in my opinion, I'm not a professional.
When I say revolution, I don't mean like people in the streets necessarily cutting off billionaire heads, although that would be rad. Don't get me wrong. What I'm talking about is like just a change in everything. Like the Renaissance wasn't necessarily actually was the Renaissance brought on by guillotines? I can't remember. We could do a little quick Google maybe to find that out.
I don't know.
Jay's making a face right now.
I'm just my thinking face.
But like realistically, I've watched a lot of think pieces on this, and there's like a phrase for this, or like a type of mindset, but because it's more believable to most people to envision the end of the entire world and the death of every living fucking being on the planet than it is to believe the end of capitalism.
Yeah. Because capitalism will end the planet. That is the end goal of capitalism, is to use everything. Barren
Ultimately,
wasteland.
though, it can't. The only way that capitalism can really destroy all of us is if it like does nukes bullshit. The Earth will ultimately heal on a scale that is much longer than us. Like we've been here for a very short period of time, as opposed to like how long the planet's here, right?
I
If we don't
don't.
blow away the
Yeah.
atmosphere, like the planet will be fine, right?
Yeah.
As
I don't.
nukes would fuck the whole house up. Don't get me wrong. Like that
Yeah.
is a game over situation. As long as the atmosphere is intact, there ain't pretty much shit we can't do under this planet on a long enough scale. It'll just kill us all off and it'll be fine, right?
Exactly. I feel you 100%. Like, but I just feel like the end goal of capitalism is to consume everything so that it goes to zero.
Well, to be honest, the end goal isn't that. It's fascism. Let's be really, really, really clear. The end goal of capitalism is just fascism.
Right, to have
it'll
control.
Reach a point where capitalism, yes, it'll reach a point where it stops doing the endless consumption thing, but only when there's nothing left outside of itself on its domain, right? So capitalism will reach its final state. Jesus Christ, this sounds horrible for me to say. Once it's become
its
a
final
global
form.
state. Yes, once it's become a global state, nothing exists outside the purview of capitalism, and nothing can threaten its existence anymore. That's the end goal. And that is ultimately a fascist world, right? Because they need to have people to other, to destroy, to constantly create that in-group, because violence is the backbone of capitalism, and fascism and capitalism are hard baked into each other, right? So you have capitalism long enough, and if it doesn't like have a society slowly move away from that bullshit and like actually set up social security nets and actually move towards a zero sum game where everything like provides for people, you will get this kind of shit where it'll just destroy everything until the system can protect itself indefinitely. And if destroying the planet becomes a threat to the system, it'll cannibalize itself in any way necessary to keep the system going, right? So you get into some real dark dystopian shit where like we're talking like global fucking Skynet shit where like everybody's fucking watched and controlled and like every little thing is sold and metered. But like I highly doubt we're gonna get that way. But
you don't think so?
No, because I look, I'm gonna be real honest with y'all. 150 years ago, this was an entirely different fucking planet, right? I've been playing a little bit of Red Dead Redemption, right? Because like a lot of people I grew up with are a lot older and are like straight up from the cowboy era.
What was 150 years ago?
I'll tell you, 150 years ago would have been 1870 something. Right now, I'll tell you this: if you go back 100 years to 1922, 10 years ago, the Wild West just died. You still had people riding around on fucking horseback 100 years ago as a main method of transportation, y'all. People seem to forget the massive, mind-numbing rate that humanity has accelerated in the past 150 years. It's so much we haven't exactly. Our mental space hasn't caught up to what happened in all of that, right? You go back 150 years, it's still frontier, it's still people picking berries, it's still like right at the start of Canada being made. Yeah. Contact was in 1490, or it was 1493, wasn't it?
What was it?
Contact with settlers was like 1493.
What, Columbus? 1492.
Well, I mean, I don't say Columbus. I say
Columbus. Oh, that guy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we were taught this fucking song as children, and it's like in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
1491s is the comedy group, right?
Yeah. So I'll always remember when fucking Columbus got here. This is the damn song.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm looking up 1872. Like, I just looked up 1872 on Wikipedia. So these are some big events that were happening in 1872 around the world. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Let's see. The Metropolitan.
Take a stab at it.
February 20th, the Metropolitan Museum of Art opens in New York City. So the Met first opened in 1812. Wow, that's been around forever. Oh my God.
Yeah.
March 1st, Yellowstone National Park. Once dubbed Coulter's Hell after John Coulter of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Did not know that. Today I learned. So in the United States, Yellowstone National Park is established as the world's first national park. So that happened in 1872. What else happened here?
That was only 150 years ago. Y'all got your first national park.
Wow. It was the first one. It was the world's first national park, according to this Wikipedia article.
When was the Black Hills turned into Mount Rushmore when they carved in the president's face?
I'm not sure, but I don't know if that was turned into a national park later. The magazine Popular Science is first published in the United States 150 years ago.
What year did we get the light bulb?
I don't know. What year was the light bulb invented? 1879.
1879.
So we didn't even have light bulbs yet.
150 years ago, and now you're walking around your pocket right now something that's more advanced than the supercomputers that they use to send a fucking rocket to the moon.
This is really interesting. May 10th, Victoria Woodhull becomes the first woman nominated for President of the United States, although she is a year too young to qualify and does not appear on the ballot. I will keep that article up for a good read later.
That's interesting. I mean, it just makes me think. Like, my mom always tells me about my grandmom's mom, and where she lived over by the art museum here in Philly, and how like it looked completely different.
Right.
Like it was like that was during like the early days of Cars. Like Cars had just released, and like there was like I looked at a picture of just the time period of Philly and what it looked like just random streets, and there's like maybe 2 cars on any given street, maybe.
I would.
And like those big, those
cry.
old sort of like, looking cars and stuff. Yeah.
They called them rolling coffins because they went too fast and they didn't have seat belts, and people who got in accidents would die.
Yeah, and initially they didn't really have like traffic lights and signs either, so it was just kind of like, hey,
Yeah. So I mean, like, you think about how far along we've come even from then.
I sway back and forth in my emotions
between wonder and terror.
Yeah, kind of like I swing back and forth between like despair, I guess, and hope and despair. Those are really the two things. Like right now, I guess I'm feeling the despair because I'm like, why why are people dying?
So
why are people starving?
I'll tell you exactly why. So that rich people can watch numbers go up in their bank account, and poor people of color can die around the world, so that white people can feel a little bit better about themselves not being quite as bad.
Right, and then I still ask
the whole fucking reason.
Right, but then I still ask why. Why is it that you're better than these people and you're more important? Like, it just drives me.
We haven't cut their heads off yet. I hate to break it to you. Historically speaking, there seems to be a group of people who like to take control of everything. And the smartest move has historically not been forming unions, but getting rid of the people altogether, because I read a really good quote from Destiny about the body and a protein in it called P53. And then how it's a protein that's in every single cell of the human body. And it's there, coded as a bomb, to destroy any cell when it becomes cancerous and starts taking up too much energy from the body's near infinite reserves, right? And there is a fucking banger of a quote where it says, oh God, I should find it, but it's something along the lines of, the punishment for abusing a system must remain in correlation to how severe the cost to the system itself is. So like, if somebody threatens to overdo, I'm actually going to find the proper quote right now. If someone...
Ooh, I think that took you off Discord because we don't hear you anymore. Or I think you're
right?
You're lagging.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi just disconnected. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah. That pixelation.
I'm gonna give you the exact quote here. Just give me 2 seconds. Nope. Here we go. Patterns will participate in a structure only if participation benefits their ability to go on existing. The more successful the structure grows, the more temptation accrues to cheat, and the greater the advantage the cheaters gain over their honest neighbors, and the greater the ability they develop to capture the very laws that should prevent their selfishness. To prevent this, the structure must punish cheaters with a violence that grows in proportion to its own success.
Hmm.
That's a hell of a quote, isn't it?
That is a hell of a quote.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you stick in a
It's
term
true.
paper to take up your word count. No.
Yeah. But it's really true, though, right?
Yeah.
If in a system where you can gain so much power that you can rewrite the rules of the entire structure itself, then there must be a reprimand for people who game and fuck with the structure on such a level equivalent to what they're doing, right? So, like, if it's a crime for you to kill somebody, right? And you go to jail, how come it's not a crime for these corporation guys to poison entire communities? How come it's not a crime that they destroy their food rather than giving it to food banks?
Because they're in
How
control, and that's
much
what I'm
blood
saying.
is
Who holds them
exactly?
accountable? No one.
And we gotta hold them accountable. I'll tell you what happened. The government was supposed to hold them accountable because the government was originally an institution of the people. But a
Mm-hmm.
long time ago, around the 1920s, the corporations started sowing anti-government propaganda to
Mm-hmm.
make people think that big government was going to come and take your rights away. And what they forgot was that big government was run by them to keep corporations in check.
Well,
So
also
what
now
happened was the corporations. Go ahead.
I was like, now it's the fact that I don't see the difference between a politician and a business person. You know what I mean? Like, all these politicians have multiple businesses and different income streams, and like, oh, this has connections to this and this has connections to this. Well, that's interesting that your business that has a connection to that particular law that you passed or that particular act that you were trying to get through. Like, that's the shit that, like, that's the problem, is like the money, the corporate bullshit has infiltrated the government. Like, the government is like, it's a puppet of these corporations at this point. There is no, like, we bailed out the banks but not the people. Like, it's just what.
All it
I
takes
know.
is the people coming together and saying that y'all have had enough.
That's the thing that I don't have hope for right now. I
I
don't
do.
think people will come together and say no.
I
What do you
just
think,
enjoy,
Scott?
like, it's well, so this isn't gonna be like the most popular thing, and I don't know if a lot of people are gonna like what I say right now, but
Not that it matters. Just say it.
I don't really think that, like recently I went to a protest, right?
Mm.
And
It was
it was
the
nice
Roe
to
v.
go
Wade one, right?
right.
Yeah.
It was nice to go for me,
Mm.
but I don't think where we, like, in here where we are at the point at the stage of capitalism that we're in, I don't think that it has much weight.
I agree. I would agree with that. Yeah. When
I
when
think
people
What doesn't have much
organize,
weight?
just organizing a protest.
I know, like, a lot of people say things like, oh, well, it starts at grassroots and you gotta build from the community. Well, where we are now, as far like at this late stage capitalist hellscapeness, that it's ineffective now. Like, there, and I'm not saying that there's no hope, because I continuously make sure, and I always try to check myself when I get hopeless in it with the reality around me. But I just like, for instance, we have the Women's March. It was massive. The Women's March was huge, and look where we are.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Where we are, it just it doesn't
Feels performative. Some of them.
And I think, well, I think that it's at the fault of our government, right? Because like, all those people that showed up for the Women's March, right? Like in a system that was running the way that I think our system should, that would have been influential, right? That would have been monumental. That would have changed everything in a proper ethical system. But we come here now to 2022, and now it's the Supreme Court is poised to take away Roe v. Wade, and I recently heard that they're doing something else really shitty, and I don't remember what it was. Recently, like today or yesterday, but the thing is that they, and once again, I'm not like, not trying to like be partisan or anything exactly, but what I'm trying to get at is when in the 2016 election they played everything like a chess piece, like, because that's what the right always does.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one power that they really have, is to be able to bring it all together, and like, they know how to pull ranks and really be cohesive, and they kind of played us all, like they put into the Supreme Court, people that they knew would be there, for a long time, because the Supreme Court's a life.
Yeah, because Obama had the ability, or Obama, the timing of it. One of the justices, there was a seat to be filled, and Obama was going to fill it right before he left his presidency, but the Republicans buried him through red tape and this, and no, you can't. Meanwhile, Trump's like, oh yeah, you can have a seat on the Supreme Court, and you can have a seat on the Supreme Court. Exactly. He's giving it out like fucking Oprah with cars. So
like, I once again, I'm not saying that we don't have recourse, and I'm not saying that building up from grassroots things are useless, but I think that
rethink how you do it.
I think we have to rethink how we do it, because it's not working. And
the one thing that I did see related to protests, though, that was working is, so some people were switching their protests to outside of these motherfuckers' houses, like Kavanaugh's house, and they were protesting outside of his house, and he was like, obviously having to deal about it.
I have a lot to say on this issue, because I'm a Canadian, and our protests go down a little differently up here versus America. You want to know what we did up here when Canada invaded Wet'suwet'en again for the 4th time? We shut down CN fucking Rail and made them lose millions upon millions of dollars until the public was begging us to give them their fucking their train tracks back. And we burnt the train tracks. Some of us lit them on fucking fire and poured gasoline on that shit. We have been ready as Indigenous people to throw our fucking lives on the line so long, right? And like get arrested and deal with shit, right? Like we talked about this in the eco solidarity and protest episode, right? How people were like putting spikes in trees and chaining themselves to it, right? And it's not to say that like that's different between a culture of Canada and America, but it's just a matter of like what it actually seriously takes to get shit done, because holding a poster board up doesn't do shit.
Right, that, yeah.
Protesting on a different level does, right? Hitting these fucking ghouls in their pocketbooks did. And when we shut down CN Rail, Canada fucking listens, right? And if they want to fuck with us again, we'll shut the rails down again and again and again, as many times as it takes, right? Because they listen to supply chain disruptions. They listen to their pocketbooks being fucking emptied. They listen to the protests outside their houses because they know they're within arm's distance. And I think it's about high time we reminded them who the fuck they serve.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. I mean, I've seen that happen here too. That's why, like, I don't mean to be like contradictory or naysay at all. I just don't know if that, like, I think what I'm getting at is like cultures are different and the systems are similar but different, and I don't know. I don't know why it is like when we do stuff like that, right? Like when we shut down highways, or we
they just
there was one a couple years ago. They kind of all did a sit-in at airports. They did all sorts. When we do stuff, it just kind of, it's like, oh, the crazy people are doing stuff again.
Okay,
You know,
I can
like, get rid of the
actually.
oh, sorry.
I was gonna help you here, Scott. So I could use a really good example. Like, okay, George Floyd, and all of the riots across the country, if not the world. I don't know
Yes.
if globally other things happen.
It happened pretty globally, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So global riots that were happening. What did we really get in America from that? We got Juneteenth.
Yeah. Because
we got a holiday and a pat on the fucking back. Oh, good job. We looted, we rioted, we smashed and grabbed, and it didn't. We got a holiday, and we got Black Lives Matter painted and whatever on the
so
street.
Then we got to do more. That's the hard truth. What we did in summer of 2020, it was not enough. And you want to know what they did up in Canada when they dug up the several thousand bodies of dead children? We're at over 10,000, by the way. You don't know what they did? They gave us a Truth and Reconciliation Day. They gave us a holiday in September. Oh, but just listen to this one. They gave us a holiday in September, claiming that it was going to be for Indigenous people. It's not a statutory holiday, so nobody actually gets the day off, and you're forced to work it if you're an Indigenous working class person, while the rich people in Congress get to take the day off to think about the fucking things that happened in the past and how much they're benefiting from settler colonial issues. Meanwhile, every Indigenous person in the fucking country is either working or doing their shit to survive that day, right? Because they don't fucking care. We cannot accept any of their token fucking successions as actual change, and we need to go for the fucking throat. We need reform. Period. End. There is no way forward. We have to fucking advocate for this shit, right? And here's the beauty of it. They're gonna die in 20 years. Boomers don't have more than 20 years on this fucking earth.
That's what
it may seem like this is never gonna change. It's gonna be a fucking different world in 30 years. I promise you.
I hope for the better, because that's the other way that I swing, is back to the hope, like between hope and despair. And when I swing back to hope, I'm like, all right, these motherfuckers, like, everyone dies, and they're getting old, and they are gonna fucking croak, and I can't wait, and I will celebrate as each fucking one bites the dust. But man, it needs to come a lot sooner.
Younger ones, like,
true.
That's the other problem.
They always groom like Madison Cawthorn. He's young. You know, is he Cawthorn? Yeah.
Here's the thing: they can never replace themselves. That's why they're so fucking afraid of this bullshit white person replacement theory. It's because they can't replace their conservative numbers because of the internet. People don't live in insular little bubbles anymore where they can't talk to people who with a different color of skin than them just because of where they live, right? Like, they are losing their grip on the world and they know it. That's why they're screaming. We're watching the last tantrum of a cantankerous generation of people who have sown more destruction on this planet than any other generation that has ever lived. And we're going to feel every single thrashing effect of their abuse because we grew up in it. We lived our adult lives in it. We've spent every single minute in this system, and it is almost impossible to imagine a world outside it until it happens. But it will come. It will come. And you know what'll come if it doesn't? Death. And I hate to say it, and that may sound grim. It's not. Everybody dies, man. It'll be pretty nice to be out of this planet and not have to be doing none of this capitalist bullshit, right? And those ghouls cannot keep this power structure up in the same way for another 150 years. It just won't. It'll either collapse just from the constant crises, from food shortages, from supply chain issues, from the lack of resources to support their extraction. It just can't continue.
Government shutdown.
Exactly. And we're at the breaking point. That's why it feels so hopeless. It's not that nothing will change. It's that we have to go through every single horrible bit of catharsis and be alive during one of the most difficult parts in history. And that's kind of the unique challenge of being a millennial. is you got given a world that was not cut out for you, that was not like geared in your best interests, and our job is
Mhm.
to just fucking survive and hold it down for the next generation who's gonna actually make this shit like really real. And I swear to God, man, they're gonna put up fucking statues of millennials and say, and Gen X, and like talk about how much we did to break the cycles of trauma and abuse that were destroying the planet. And I see it in how we raise our children now, right? I
That is
see
true.
people in our generation raising kids without hitting them, by just talking to them, and they give them like understanding and real compassion. Like my 5-year-old nephew is, he's not 5 anymore, he's getting older. That's a sign of me just still thinking he's 5. He's more emotionally well adjusted than most adults in my family because he hasn't been through a lick of abuse, right? And those kids are growing up without that hollowness in them that we got, you know? And
Yeah.
they're going to change the fucking world in ways so much more brilliant and intangible to us. Like they are, to quote Leanne Betwixt Simpson, they are everything that we could have been. And that hurts to hear, but it's true, you know? So we don't have to believe that it's possible because
I
it's
do
not our
believe
job to do it.
I
We just gotta
do
hold it down.
I
Go
do
ahead.
believe. See, that's the thing, though. I do like, as bleak as my words were, that was not to say that I think that it's impossible, right?
Mhm.
I don't. I also. I'm actually so optimistic, in fact, that I actually think that. I mean, we may be in our 70s, but we may be in our rocking chairs, throwing our old tarot cards and being like, "Oh shit! Look at the news! Look what they did!" Like. I'm
The
I'm
kids are
actually that
alright.
optimistic to think that I may actually get to see it. That could be wishful thinking, but I like to think that I will get to see it before before I'm gone from this earth. But
Me and
I
Ro talk
do
about that a lot.
believe. Hmm.
Me and Ro, we talk about that a lot. Like when we fling back and forth between like it ain't ever gonna change, and then it's like, all right, but when we're old as shit, we'll be sitting here watching the hollow project. I don't know, whatever fucking fancy new TV technology we have, and we'll be like, look, they did it. We did it. We survived. We made it. Like I don't know.
And I do believe
Yeah, we
that,
will.
and I believe that constantly, not sometimes, not a little. There are days where I am more angry or depressed about things, right? But I try to, like, when I talk to a Christian, my old long childhood friend who lives with me, um, he often gets very, very hopeless
Hmm.
about the situation. And I mean, I don't blame him, you know. Um, but I always, he always tries to remember, like, because I always kind of bring it back, to something hopeful, to something, good. Um, so that way I have something to, that keeps the flame, light, lit, inside. You can't let that flame go out. I know it's small, but you gotta keep that. You gotta keep it alive. You gotta, because if you don't have hope, it's not worth it anymore. You know what I'm saying? You gotta have hope. You gotta have hope. You gotta work for it. You know what I mean? Hope is not something that you just have. Hope is something you work at. You know?
Even if it's like, I don't know, maybe like in a way, like instead of doom scrolling, maybe search for like podcasts or YouTube videos of people that have good commentary, like have a different spin. Like instead of just here's the problem, like, okay, well, here are some potential solutions. Here's what we could do. Here's what you could do. Maybe that could be a way to kind of, if you feel hopeless, that could be a way to create hope, maybe, or at least like start to get the ideas that hope is possible.
I know this is also really silly too, but I believe personally that another way to keep hope alive is to look at really kind people. And when I say look at them, I'm like just talking about your Joe Schmo who like picks up an old lady's handbag on the bus who dropped it. Like
Yeah, not the guy
I'm
who's
talking.
filming himself as he gives the homeless guy, 5K because he is
That
a
ain't
famous
kindness.
YouTuber.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Look, just watch the strangers like suddenly get into a conversation and laugh about something silly. Like
I love
just
doing that. I
just
love people watching like that.
I know this is lame, but there are times where I watch like just small acts of kindness and I like will literally start crying. I know it's lame and it's actually kind of sad that I have to say that because that's like the reality of the world that I live in where seeing acts of kindness makes me cry because it feels so far away from the true like the reality that I'm living in. But it's in those moments that I actually can smile, you know, where like, walking out on the street, I don't feel like, I'm because you always feel vulnerable, nowadays everything feels like you're, walking on a wire, and anything can happen any minute, a sick person with, a gun can just decide all you people are weird. Like I think about it all the time. Like one of the things, this is one of like the more sad things I think about. Like PA hates Philly, right?
Yeah, the state of
PA
Pennsylvania
hates
Philly. Yeah.
Everyone in PA, like out in PA,
Yeah,
they're all live rurally. They all have guns. What's to stop them from pulling? Do you guys remember that horrible mass shooting? They're all horrible. Where the guy went to a concert and he was shooting down at them.
Yeah.
What's to stop one of them from doing that?
Las
Like in
Vegas
Center
Country
City,
Music
Philly.
Festival.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a country music festival, Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas.
What's to stop one of them from
doing
getting some weird delusion in their brain, from setting up somewhere in Center City, and just starts taking out all the the quote unquote nasty libs, the Democrats.
I'm gonna be honest. Something's gonna happen to make all this change. You all saw what Trump posted on his tweet, right?
No,
what did he say? I did not see it.
I'm not even.
Oh, you cut out. You froze.
No, come back.
Oh,
hang on. Backtrack a little bit. Restart.
I'm not even sure I can say it without getting in trouble, but like I'm sure we can because we're just paraphrasing him. He was calling for literal civil war on a tweet. This past week.
I wish I was surprised by that.
Yeah. So, Katie's in the chat actually, and she popped something interesting.
Hi, Katie. It's so good to I can't see you, but like it's really good to be
to know you're there. So she was saying, I was interviewing a girl today, and to answer my interview question, what type of extracurricular activities do you do at school? She said, I don't have any extracurricular activities because my focus is my out-of-school activities of activism and going to protests. And Katie was saying, and that's a pure type of hope that can come at any random time. So yeah, that is...
Yeah.
That's fucking wild. Okay, that gives me...
The kids are all right, man.
I'm swinging out of despair and I'm coming back over to the hope side.
The kids are all right. I really do put my my belief and my faith in the future generations, right? And I it's gonna sound cheesy, but a lot of what I do is for them, to make sure that they got something to pass on, to make sure that they have somebody who's older who actually wants to give them something to think about, to make them better people, to help them grow, to not just have the same narratives repeated, right? Like we're doing everything for them. Like I'm already 32. I'm already like, this may sound weird and grim, but I'm already kind of planning my death, right? I can't afford to retire. I have CPTSD, and I was watching a long form essay today on like Zuko's mental health and his trauma from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah, I know you're chuckling because I'm sure you've seen a million videos on Zuko because he's like the hot topic on YouTube.
Well, I watch what's her name, the sister, but yeah, there's videos.
Azula. Yeah. But like I have very severe.
Oh, she's crazy too. She's wild. Yeah. I've never actually watched the show as a kid, so I'm watching through it with Rue actually.
The Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of those few rare shows that is timeless. 10 out of 10. You can always come back to it. It'll always make you cry. It is always on point. It is never off. It's perfect. I would not change a single fucking thing about that show.
When it comes to that show, I think when I first watched it though, like when we were first watching through it, I didn't like it. Like I was like, God.
It's a little too for kids at
Yeah,
first, and that's
yeah.
kind of what's hard to get over it. But then by the end of the first season, it matures the fuck up. It's just that like it does that really classic television shit where it like sets up the pilot as being overbearingly goofy to draw in kids because 90s television underestimated the intelligence of the average child and
Yes.
needed to give them all this stupid like slapstick garbage when in reality what the kids actually cared about was the intense plot and all the magic and all the cool shit going on. So
Yeah. Well, what it was,
So
it was
actually-
too much like, oh, here's the problem, but we fixed it. And it was like, oh, there's a problem and they're going to fix it. Wow. Like, it was just too, like, I don't know, kind of predictable.
until they get into shit like Iroh's son being dead and him not having any real tangible stuff to do about it, and like Zuko having intense CPTSD and like dealing with all the trauma and the shame and the guilt associated with that and how he heals with it and his non-linear journey and lashing out at the people who actually care for him and love him because it's the only thing he knows and he's still trying to appease that father narrative. I've never seen a show that does CPTSD as well as fucking Avatar. And why I was bringing it up is because like one of the symptoms of CPTSD that people have is they often throw themselves into a cause that might get themselves killed because the weird thing about CPTSD people is one of two things happens with us. Sometimes we think the trauma can't been for nothing. I have to make a difference in the world, you know? This can't have been for nothing, and that's sometimes how we hold on to it. And sometimes we want a way out. We really want a way out, but you can't just be like, I'm done. So we put ourselves into really fucking dangerous situations trying to make the world a better place. And maybe we die in the process, but that's what a lot of us end up doing to make sense of anything that we've been through, right? Because a lot of us who don't end up turning into really awful people, we have to do something to reconcile the intense shit that happened to us, you know? And that energy, that catharsis, it doesn't just go nowhere and sit there. Like you do something with it, right? You either actively become a fucking problem in the world or you start trying to fucking solve problems. But I don't know anybody who went through or actually no, sometimes trauma can just make you shut down too and not fucking do anything and just be stuck in a hole. And it can do that too, you know. It's not a linear thing, but yeah, a lot of us really kind of throw ourselves into wanting to make things change because we don't really want to even be here to begin with, right? And that's just a hard truth about CPTSD.
As someone with the stuck in a hole part, I will say though is that sometimes the desire to do something to help is like a haunting thing, and it's almost it
Yeah.
looms over me sometimes, like in like unfortunately a worst way possible. And sometimes it kind of becomes so big that it just kind of forces me back down. And that is something like I struggle with because I know exactly what you're talking about, Sophia. I get it like 100%.
Of course
Um,
you do.
you know, it is there and it gnaws at me and it haunts me sometimes because yeah, you want to think that. I mean, I would like to think that like I'm over the idea that I experienced it for a reason. Um, I am over that, but the thing is that I also now I'm self-aware enough now that I know that underneath of the trauma, underneath of the complex post-traumatic stress, there is there was kind of a how do I put this? There were lessons learned through healing from it,
Yeah.
and I want to be able to use those lessons to teach other people.
Hmm.
Because I realize that the one thing that in this world that we don't have at all, and now I like once again I can only speak for the States, but in the States I know for a fact we don't believe in like things like feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is no emotional literacy here in the States. There's no one is teaching children how like about big feelings and little feelings and how to move through those things and what is an appropriate response. If a kid steals your toy truck, like, do you go beat the shit out of them? No, there's ways to handle things before we start fighting, and no one's teaching anyone these complicated, and there are ways to do it, right? I mean, I'm not trained in it, but there is real things to be done to teach people, and it has to start young. That's why I keep talking about children, because we have to start teaching them how to use things like empathy and emotional intelligence really young, so that way they can understand how to have conversations, how to talk, how to be uncomfortable, how to talk about difficult topics, like when they need to talk about that uncomfort, because 9 times out of 10, what ends up happening when people in general are uncomfortable in really intense situations, we end up lashing out.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have, there's no basis for that here in our culture at all. And it's actually the amount of times recently in the last 2 weeks that I've seen people say empathy is weakness, all that stuff, and I've seen it a lot. And of course it's mostly cishet men, and yeah, and there needs to be education to teach, even if it's to teach parents to teach their children, you know what I'm saying? But that is one of the reasons why I want to get into mental health so bad.
I
'Cause
also
I like
see like a lot of our generation, our parents now, and a lot of our generation. I mean, some of us, I feel like some of us were able to see the things that were fucked up in our own childhood and say, hey, I'm not going to do that to my kids. I'm going to be different. I'm going to be better. And so a good majority of our generation has, a good portion of our generation has done that. But then I also see the parents in our generation that are not great, and they have just done nothing but continue the same cycle, the same trivial bullshit, the same I'll smack you upside your head, I'll just like screaming at
I'll
their
give
kids.
you a reason to cry.
I'll give you a reason to cry. I see it in stores and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, just drag the kid through the fucking store, like. That's the shit that like bothers me. It's kind of like what you're saying, Scott, about like politicians, like the Republican politicians, how they like groom people that are younger than them. And like I don't know if Canada also has this same thing when it comes to like politics, but like there's political families, like there's almost dynasties in this fucking country. It's possible to get in like as just like a regular person into politics, like that is still very possible, but like the Bushes, the Clintons, like the Kennedys, like they're.
Have you heard of the Trudeaus?
I thought that the Trudeaus, because I think you mentioned before something like his father was.
Pierre Elliott Trudeau was one of the longest running Canadian prime ministers. And his son, Justin Trudeau, is probably going to be very similar simply because they're the Trudeaus, and the Liberals pick a Trudeau because they're going to get the votes, and it's like we don't even have voter limitations. There's no, sorry, not voter limitations, term limitations. So the Trudeaus can run and get reelected for 40 years, and then the next son can get it for 40 years.
It's a
And
monarchy.
the next son can get it for 40 years. It's essentially a structural monarchy, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what the Liberal Party of Canada has become, is a red monarchy, and then the Conservative Party of Canada is the blue monarchy, but they're still the fucking monarchy.
It's funny that the Liberals are red.
Oh yeah, I think the colors are
the reverse.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Here's the fun part. It doesn't matter. Here's the best.
Because they're the same party,
joke.
which is just like the Democrats and the fucking Republicans.
Here's the best political joke I ever made at work, in an elevator full of a bunch of different people. They said, "Oh, Globe and Mail, is this a conservative or a liberal building?" I looked at them and I said, "What's the functional difference?" And nobody could answer me, and everybody just started laughing.
That's actually a point I was going to make too, is that another problem that I know we face here in the States is that a lot, like at least for like in South Philly in particular, see, all like everyone likes to be like, oh, South Philly always votes Democrat, but the thing is that people don't understand is that when they say like they vote Democrat, they're not talking like about like a progressive like AOC or something, right? They're talking about like career Democrats, like the ones that are like hardcore, like I will defend capitalism to the very end kind of
I'm
thing.
gonna
I was
overturn
in the
Roe v.
Union.
Wade type ones.
Yeah, the guys who were like, I was in the Union, and I'm all about
Right.
the Union. It's like, shut
Right.
the fuck up.
Bro, if you were in the Union, you didn't learn shit from it, and you were the type of person who took your high dues and said, huh, wouldn't it be great if nobody else had this? Get fucked.
Actually,
Not your
there
high
was
dues, your high wages.
speaking of Philly and unions and shit like that, so there's a show, Abbott Elementary, that's really good. It's about a bunch of teachers. It's like shot in the style of like The Office, like a mockumentary
Really
kind
want
of
to
thing.
watch that show.
It's very
I don't
good.
watch the show.
It's very
I don't
good,
watch the
and especially
show.
if you're from Philly, you'll appreciate it. But even if you're not, if you went to a public school, I think you'd appreciate it. So basically, it's the one teacher. He's teaching a unit on unions, like unionizing and stuff like that. And so the one teacher, she's from South Philly, so she's like this South Philly kind of chick, and she's like, oh, like you're teaching the kids about like the labor strikes and shit like that, and like the formation of like the iron workers union and shit. And he's like, yeah, like, she's like, oh, I got a guy, like he can come in and talk about it, like that'd be great. And meanwhile, he's been teaching this unit as like the police force and the union workers peacefully came to an agreement and there was no fighting and blah blah blah. Like that's what he's teaching in the unit. And so she brings this guy in and she's like, yeah, like my buddy, he was a captain during what was going on, and he thought that meant police captain. No.
Hold on. I'm just going to throw a word out there for anybody who wants to Google this shit for history. Go look up the word Pinkerton. Just go find out what the Pinkertons did. Have fun reading about 1920s, 1930s horror stories. You're welcome. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways, go on.
But anyway, so the guy that she brings in, his name is like, I think it's like Vinny the Tire Iron something or other. Like, and so he's sitting there like this big, fat South Philly Italian guy is just like, yeah, and then we fucking blah 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 blah. Like it was just like beautiful. It was beautiful, and she made a point, like so her and the teacher were talking afterwards. He was like, that was like not what I was expecting. And she was like, listen, like these kids have to know where they come from, the good, the bad, the ugly, the everything. You can't sugarcoat it. They need to know everything so they can make their own decisions and their own choices and learn from that, so it was
Sounds like
a good episode.
Propaganda, Jay.
Right, liberal propaganda. God.
Wow, you can't sugarcoat it anymore. You know what's funny? How in 1 minute conservatives will be like, these liberals, facts don't care about your feelings. You can't sugarcoat everything. This is this and this is that. Next thing you know, you're like, slavery happened. World War II happened. And they're like, you gotta give an alternate theory. You can't just tell people this thing. It's just like, my brother in Christ, have you listened to yourself?
They don't.
No.
They don't.
But
They just talk.
the other problem that I have is like the people that are so far left that they're kind of right. Like there are some people that go so far right that they're basically left, which always makes me laugh. But then there are some people that go so far left that they're like they almost want fascism in a different way. Like
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, and it might
So,
be a
like,
misunderstanding. but-
yeah, so like let me try to put it into like an example. Elon trying to buy Twitter. Right?
Oh, can I explain this to you? It's really fun. Elon's not left. He's a capitalist and always has been, and they like to drape themselves in the apparel of the left and make it look like they're doing that because it appeals
Oh, I know
to more
Elon's
people
not
and it's
left.
a capitalist brand.
Oh yeah, I know he's a piece of shit. No, it was the people talking about Elon purchasing Twitter. It was the Discord. It was the twittering on the Twitter about Twitter. It was very meta. So, Elon was going to purchase Twitter, right?
Mhm.
And so, a lot of these people on the left, they're like, "Oh my God, he can't do that. We have to stop it. We have to." Blah, blah, blah. And then like people on the other side were like, "Okay, whatever." But like ultimately, I was like, "What does it fucking matter if Elon buys Twitter?
It
He's
has
just
a huge
another
impact on free
fucking
speech.
rich guy that owns." Yeah, but Elon believes in free speech.
he believes in white boy free speech, but I'm pretty sure if a person of color on his platform calls out racism and a white person reports him for it, then that post will get taken down. Whereas if they call out fucking Klan shit, it'll fucking get that one will get taken down. You know what I mean? Like there
Right.
is that double standard where people of color had to start saying white person as the words YT on Facebook, similar to what white people might think is like YouTube. That's because like Facebook algorithms were taking them down for talking about the effects of like what white people were doing to them, but like straight up anti-black racism will stay on Facebook, right?
I guess sometimes I approach it from a very objective, logical point of view, right? So you take people who they believe in their God and their guns and their fucking white supremacy bullshit, right? I don't think that that's right. I don't subscribe to any of that. But if they wanted to blast that out into the aether, under the rules of free speech, they should be allowed, right? Like,
should they?
It's free speech.
Here's the thing.
That's where I'm like, I don't know where the objectivity comes into. Like, so what is free speech?
Should free speech allow you to talk about rounding up a posse of people to go kill some queers down the road? No, and it doesn't extend to that because it never extends to the incitement of violence.
Right, but like, I don't know. I guess it would depend on what exactly is said. I guess that's what
free speech. I'll be real honest to y'all. What a lot of people get crossed about free speech is that we think that we have the right to say whatever the fuck we want. Free speech means that the government can't put you in jail for criticizing them. That's what it means. And that's what the law centers around. Yeah. It never meant that we have freedom from repercussions of the things that we have said. In no world has that ever been a thing, right? And also at the same time, go ahead.
I think that's kind of what Jay's getting at, is the idea that like you could say whatever the hell you want to. You could be a horrible bigot. You could do whatever you want, but you are not immune to the repercussions, the backlash of what you say.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, anyone.
I think Jay is being very, very like what is like not considering not taking into consideration the morality of it, just the fact that free speech means that you can say quite literally whatever you want to, but you are not immune from the social backlash of what it is that you say. Now, I know that like we've said before that like, I do agree that, maybe hates, we used to say a lot hate speech isn't free speech. But the thing is that they're going to say it no matter what I do.
Right.
But I'm allowed to yell at them for doing it.
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like if a bunch of fucking Nazi assholes want to be Nazi assholes together and talk about their Nazi asshole bullshit on their corner of the internet, well, that's what they're doing. Like, we can't stop them.
Yeah, we can. It's the paradox of tolerance. The fact that you tolerate people who are advocating for open violence of destroying entire other groups of human beings allows them to actively organize and enact that violence on those other people, right? Like, I straight up know somebody who got jumped by white supremacists a week ago and is like in the hospital fucking recovering right now. You want to know what the cops did? They let those guys out without charges. And they had the person brought in on shit, and they could have actually like went to court and shit, but they're not, right? And like, I've seen it happen so many fucking times where like would-be freedoms that should apply for like freedom of speech don't exist if you're a minority, and you can have literal like bodily harm done against you. And like the cops were trying to pin it on the guy who was knocked unconscious and bleeding.
I guess that's the problem of free speech, is because free speech isn't really free speech because we have racism
and systemic inequality.
Right.
And you automatically have a group of people who own the entire system, who enforce everything with violence, and the guise of free speech very often gets used to reinforce the systemic inequality and violence of the people who want to just objectively make other people's lives shittier. Like, what we often talk about free speech in a bubble should be about like protecting our right to say what we want and voice our opinion and not be repressed as people. But when we actually talk about like advocating for free speech on like the we should be able to say what we want, it allows those people room to actually go and cause harm to people on a day-to-day life and allow other people who agree with them to work positions as cops and let them off without charges, so that we have to fucking then find out what to do as a community to deal with this when these white supremacists keep walking around beating up more people of color without getting reprimanded by the cops after fucking video footage of it gets pulled in too. Like, that's what happened, right?
What I also find interesting, so it's like a lot of things with like white supremacy, it's like very like blatant violence, right? But what I genuinely find interesting from like a human perspective, I guess, is sometimes I try and like, what is it like to think like them, right? And so like from their perspective, like we are the enemy, like we are the ones that are corrupting and making the world bad, and making the kids think about X, Y, and Z, and corrupting the church and God, and sometimes I try and put myself in that mindset of like, that must be a terrifying, awful feeling to have if you genuinely feel that way.
With that, if you want to put yourself in their shoes, imagine a lack of love, a lack of support,
definitely a lack of
care,
love,
a
for
lack
sure.
of community, a lack of people who were concerned about you when you were going down a bad path, a lack of people who could have told you better, a lack of people who would have called you in, who would have begged you to do anything different. All of those people who went down that real shitty path, they had people pushing them that way. They had a lack of support. Like a lot. I ain't just gonna like say that everybody who's a racist, is that way because of some shit. Because sometimes people just choose to be awful, and we have to deal with that too.
I was at a dangerous crossroads myself as a young person. My family is incredibly racist. The N-word was thrown around at the dinner table like it was nothing coming from my dad. So in my early year, like I literally, like, my dad told me to go to school and ask why we didn't have White History Month. Like, and I was like, why don't we have White History Month? Because I was a child and I was repeating what I heard. And then when I got into my teenage years, there was moment, like I said horrible racist jokes that I basically parroted from my parents and other people in my family. I harbored racist ideals. I wasn't like, I wouldn't say like I'm not like out like a Nazi, this and that, but like I said and did some shit that I do not agree with now, and I'm not proud of.
Same though. You think I didn't hear slurs like that growing up?
Right.
You think I ain't said shit like that when I was young and just parroting the shit that my parents said until I learned to grow up and choose to do different?
Yeah.
I've been in that boat, and that's why I talk about like
it's a slippery slope.
The insidiousness of this shit, right? Because like I am who I am because I chose to make the apple fall farther from the tree, right? I ain't gonna paint my parents like they're bad people because they ultimately try and do their best, but they are also products of their time. There's times I catch them on their shit and I'm like, yo, that ain't cool no more. You can't be using this phrase. You can't be talking like that, and I have that conversation with them, right? But ultimately, it's a choice that we make, right? To walk away from that, or to embrace it. And those people who chose to embrace it also made a choice too, right? And they were hurt just like we were, but maybe they didn't get exposed to the right sources. And maybe they did. Maybe they just chose to be a shit person, because I have met those people too, And I think part of the problem is the fact that we don't treat people for who they are when they tell us. There's a really good quote. When someone tells you who they are, believe them.
I was just thinking, because like especially to be a white person, right? But to not be well off financially, like to have a very middle class and or lower middle class, if not poverty level kind of life, it's very easy to fall into that white supremacist rhetoric, because they're like, yeah, well, you're poor. You're poor too. You're this, you're that. And so it makes you angry, and then you start to get, and then, like when I was applying for colleges, man, my dad drilled it into my head. He's like, yeah, no scholarships for you. You're just white.
Mhm.
Like, and it would make me angry. Like, he would just fuel that, you know? And that's such a horrible, critical age to be like...
You want to know what's funny, though?
Hmm.
Native kids feel like the only scholarships they're allowed to get are the ones that are specifically for them, because every other white kid's going to get all of them. That's how Native kids feel.
Right.
That standard of feeling like you ain't going to get anything that's allotted to you outside of just like that, it's a double standard that's applied to all of us.
It's
right?
it's interesting. It's like we can all empathize with each other in the fact that we all feel like we're not going to get anything. We all feel like we're not getting ahead.
Yeah.
We all feel like we're getting nothing. And
I have
who's
a really,
the real
really,
problem?
I have two amazing quotes on this, right? There's a video I'm going to link for the show notes today from Bo the Fifth Column. Once again, I'm going to reference one of his videos. He was talking about why systemic racism being fixed can cause like literally everything else to get fixed. You want to know why we don't have social security nets? The idea of welfare queens, right? How they use that racist idea of somebody who's black using the system to game it so they don't have to work. That's why you don't have a social security net, because of racism, right? And he goes into every single little thing about like healthcare, wages, tipping, every single level of oppression that gets exported to the wider population is always tested on a minority demographic first. And that's why solving systemic racism and solving the issues of discrimination against your marginalized communities will actually solve discrimination against the entire population, because those policies come about from racist rhetoric, right? It's like redlining, you know, got to cut down the trees in the poor neighborhoods and the black neighborhoods so that you can fly helicopters over them and see what they're doing, right? Because they're going to be getting up to shit, right? And then it causes other problems, and everything's fucking cyclical, and you keep putting all the fucking eggs in one basket, right? Like that. It's just it's nonsensical, you know. I had a really good point I was making with that. And there was a second quote too, but my brain's forgetting it, so I'm just gonna pass the mic over.
All good. I was gonna say we are coming up. We are a little bit over an hour, or like an hour and 15. I really like the discussion we had here today. I think it's one that I've been needing to have. Just there's just so much going on, and it's that pendulum back and forth between hope and despair and hope and despair, and it's really hard. I don't like the swing, and I don't like the constant swing. It's really hard to keep myself equal, you know, and keep myself balanced. And I'm sure there's a ton of people out there who are kind of feeling the same, because like, you know, you have good days where you do this cool thing, or like go away for the weekend, you go to a show or go for a walk, like whatever the thing is that makes you happy, and then it's just like immediately struck down by like the next calamity, crisis, this school shooting, fucking politician bullshit nonsense.
I have done nothing these past couple of days, and I feel as if I've leaned heavier into looking up like all like lately I've been looking up the PA Ren Fair. I haven't been in years. Then
I've never been
place...
actually. I really want to go.
Darian hasn't either, and I would love to take you guys.
Yes.
But and then I was looking up this place in Utah called Evermore Park, and like I love it because like I know it's super inclusive, because the sort of the lead actor for like the Pirate Guild, Madam or I forget Madam something is a non-binary actor who is a non-binary character using feminine pronouns, which I love. And you know, so they're super inclusive. It's like a super safe space, and it's basically like it's Renaissance Fair meets LARP meets Dungeons and Dragons, sort of.
That's cool.
And like it's a super, and like what I'm trying to get at is like and in the most healthiest way, by the way. I've actually been doing good with my escapism, by the way. It's been healthy, in my opinion, healthy escapism, but I'm using it knowing what I'm doing. I'm not unaware of my escapism when it becomes a problem. Yay therapy. But I've been needing it. Like I've been needing to sort of like just look into these possible outings and these future vacations. Like I was just also thinking, there's this really cool like kitschy shop opening up in Peddler's Village, New Hope, PA, and it's called Cloak and Wand, and they like sell all sorts of like sort of like spooky, like witchy, like kitschy witchy, not like witchcraft exactly.
Cute witchy stuff.
Like fantasy and like that kind of thing, right? It's like pretty much like they love like, they
Good for
sell like D&D
decorations.
products and stuff, like decorations, and they also have this really cool potion bar where there's like 64 options, and like you can make your own like soda or like hot chocolate and stuff. Like it's just this like kitschy sort of really cool like shop that they're opening up in Peddler's Village. And like I'm just like leaning into things like that just because like I kind of can't handle right now like I just need things that make me excited. Like I'd rather see people dressed in like really cool medieval fantasy cosplay than, and it's not that I'm not holding space for the lives lost, of course. I actually found a really nice prayer and I lit a candle and everything. But because that's all I really could do. But yeah, I get it. You know what I mean? Like this pendulum swing, it's nauseating.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of dizzying, and that's why, like, worrying about these sort of fun things, it just helps to alleviate some of the pressure. But
Yeah.
the thing is like, once again, I know whenever, in the past, me mentioning escapism has always come with like a strange edge because I have a problem with it. But I want you to understand that there is nothing inherently wrong with escapism. Like, you're allowed to indulge, you're allowed to escape. That's what it's there for, So, yeah. That's just for anybody who ever felt guilty. Because I used to feel guilty too. Sorry. I used to feel guilty when I would escape. Because I did have a problem with it. But now that I'm better and I feel better and I oddly don't use that anymore, I think it's because I want it to be like special. I view my escapism as something like really fun, and I think I've come to this place where it's like, well, if I ever get the chance to like LARP it, like, or when I play D&D, or when I go to like a PA Ren Fair or something, I want to be able to fully enjoy it without any sort of taint of trauma. So I think I've kind of found a way to sort of like, now when I disassociate, it really is pretty much just either like nothingness, or it's just like the dizzying disassociation, like the actual side effects of disassociation. And I don't necessarily, sorry everyone listening, but yeah, I just don't want people to ever feel guilty for it. That's like a lesson that I learned. You're allowed to soothe your you actually should be exercising your inner child. It's actually one of the big reasons why the past generations are so toxic. It's because they were taught that their inner child needs to be silenced.
My inner child's dead. Don't ask.
True, because it can't die.
Well, you know what? I would tell you the moment my inner child died, but it would require me to recount a very early trauma on camera, and nobody needs that. Sorry, continue.
No, it's okay.
I know what you're getting at, though. This idea of like, just like this common thing of like, being an adult is just doing all the shit you were either not allowed to do or couldn't afford to do as a kid. Like buy the thing, buy the action figure, buy the comic book, do the thing, go to the LARP, if you can. Like that's what I'm trying to do as an adult. I'm just trying to do shit that I want to do that I was never allowed to do.
I guess it's different for me.
What do you mean?
It's gonna sound a little trauma dumpy, but my inner child died the moment I had a gun put in my hands. And I was told to kill something.
That makes sense. I can see that, especially if you're not like geared towards, being a killing type person.
Well, my first job was trapping and killing gophers, so yeah.
Right.
It's not ideal.
Not what you wanted, yeah. I feel that. Absolutely.
But trauma dumps aside, I remember the two quotes that I was gonna say. um, it's a quote from Russell Means about how the cruelty that American Indigenous people faced was essentially. I'm really paraphrasing loosely because I haven't read the book in a while, but that it's essentially a preparation or experimentation for a very specific type of like late stage capitalism that'll get exported to everybody else in the country, and that the suffering that everybody else experiences will not be unique because it will have been expressly tested on minorities ahead of time, right?
Mm.
And like, holy fuck, man, he hit the nail on the head, right? And that's part of why we see so much like, but you got this, but no, we're dealing with this, and how do you know what we're going through? And then, this is the back and the forth. Like, man, he fucking predicted it like back in the 1970s, right? Fucking 50 years ago. The second quote was correlating to when Scott said, Scott said, I'm over the whole it needs to have been for something mentality. When we're talking about like the general mentalities that can come with CPTSD. There's a quote I'm going to butcher from Caduceus Clay in one of my favorite podcasts. Dungeons and Dragons is the game, Critical Role is the show, and it's the second campaign. They're confronting a very nasty person, and I'm not going to give you too much spoilers, but he's talking about the villain's talking about how the horrible things he had done to this character made him stronger, right? Made him better. And then Caduceus hits him with, it's not trauma that makes someone better. It's love and the people who carry them through it and help them heal in the end. And you would know that if you had anyone around you, but you're a fool and no one cares, and you don't have anyone who loves you. And I sincerely pray for you to have that before you pass away, someone who will mourn your loss. And it's like the most like, oh, what?
Everyone's like,
quote in the world.
what?
Yeah, it's
That's
one of
why
those, but it's true.
That's why if you notice when I was saying that, I don't know if either of you picked up on it, but I was very intentional how I was stating things. So that way, because it's easy to kind of accidentally say that too when you're trying to talk about that. That's why I said healing from, and not the trauma did this, right? I used to think that. Because trauma people, whatever it is, you like to find a strength inside of it, right? And the thing is that, I mean, I think in part maybe it gives you perspective, but that's not really a strength. It's not necessarily doing anything good for you. It just gives you a certain level of perspective, maybe. But the healing is what actually made it all make sense. You know what I'm saying? And so it's the healing from trauma that makes you move it. So that's why I was very intentional when I was speaking. When I was saying that, because I wanted that to be noted. You know what I'm saying?
I did pick up on that you were very specific in the way you said it. You did say the healing from the trauma. So yeah, I did pick up on that.
Yep. And that's precisely why what one of my favorite characters from Critical Role.
Caduceus is the best.
Should I reach out to Critical Role and be like, hey, you want to do an ad?
They're so
actually,
big
no, we should
that
probably
people advertise in their show.
I know,
They
I was
have
gonna
to
say
advertise elsewhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or like sponsor. No, I should see how much it. I'm curious. I should probably look up their ad rates. I'm very curious how much it is to advertise on their podcast.
You got your perfect warlock, your weapons and supplies. I can't sing anymore without a copyright claim here.
Well, I think we had a really good discussion today. I enjoyed it, even though I'm feeling. I think I'm swinging back into the hope, less out of the despair.
Good. I will bludgeon you back into the hope camp any day that I can.
It's okay sometimes, like I think it's good to also talk about it. It takes the pressure off. Sometimes I think that despair part of it is more like it's like as if you're like bearing a lot of weight, like that kind of very more rocks, kind of thing. It's just kind of like
you're pulling a heavy chariot.
Yeah. And then I think when you start talking about it, it just kind of it empties the bucket.
You want to know what's my solution to despair?
Guillotines?
God.
Believing in the incredible power of violence. It's a quote from the meme about Metal Gear Revengeance. You know how my chapter 1, my amazing battle against fascism with love. Chapter 1. I learned that fascism cannot be defeated with love. Chapter 2. The incredible power of violence.
I was just thinking, like, I hate to say this, but all I could see is my partner saying that.
Oh, yeah.
That's very Darian phrase.
Very Darian.
As Darian busts out the dragon sword, the incredible power of violence.
I could see that.
Literally that.
Well,
Yeah.
it has been a good time. I think we can wrap it up here for tonight. If you're feeling hopeful or in despair, hang out in the Discord. We can help you either way. We can swing you back.
Can we really help you? No.
Oh, we can help you. We could push
suffer.
you on the swing. So if you want to feel more despair, we got plenty of that. We could dig up some things to feel terrible about, or we could dig up some things to feel hopeful about. Yes, or if you're feeling, in despair, Sophia can bludgeon you back into the hopeful side.
Go block a pipeline! Take over your local train tracks! Stop your metro! Stop the subway! Shut down infrastructure as a form of protest! This is not actually serious advice, this is me making a parody!
Anyway, we will see you all in the next one. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Good night. Bye.
It's ridiculous.